LoveLore Library. Chapter 80. When Jingwan heard how Sun Yijia addressed the other party, she immediately realized who this person was. The first impression that Wan Fangfei gave Jingwan was that she deserved to be a woman as famous as Sister Jia. She was like a clear water hibiscus, gentle and elegant. Wan Fangfei was also holding a peach blossom in her hand. She walked over unhurriedly with a tranquil smile on her face. Under the tender and beautiful peach blossoms, she didn't lose her luster. Instead, it made her stand out from the crowd. The moment one noticed her, it was difficult to see any other beauty. It was really a case of comparing one's beauty to another's. If Sun Yijia wasn't wearing a white cloth on her face and dressed casually, she might be able to share the limelight with her. However, from now on, no one would compare the two of them. No matter how outstanding Sun Yijia was, the first thing people would think of when they thought of her was her disfigured face. One turned from a treasure to a pile of rubble, while the other was still a treasure. When they mentioned the two of them again, they would probably use the word used to. Normal people might sigh at Sun Yijia's experience, but they would mostly ridicule and gloat. Because the two of them were the best among the noble ladies. It was said that the same sex repelled each other. In addition, the two of them had different standpoints behind them. They might not have the heart to compare, but they still couldn't help but care a little when they heard more about them. They rarely saw each other. Now that they met under such circumstances, should it be said that it was fate or heaven's will? Wan Fangfei was very calm. There was nothing strange on her face at all. It seemed that she was still facing the intact Sun Yijia. This kind of person either had a really good mentality or was very good at pretending. Even Jingwan couldn't tell which kind she belonged to in a short time. When she was born, her brothers and sisters had already grown up. Naturally, they didn't compete with her. Her peers were all nephews and nephews. As an elder, she naturally had to give way to others. Above her, she was still pampered by her parents. Ruan Ruizhong saw it more clearly than Duke Dinghua. He didn't treat his daughter as a tool to exchange for benefits. She was the real Jiao Jiao who grew up safely and without worries. Then, could she be considered a person with a good mentality? However, Jingwan still felt that there was a trace of inconsistency. In this kind of environment where she was pampered, it was already good that she didn't become unruly and willful. In a situation where no one forced her, how could she still be so outstanding? After all, there were so many things to learn. To be considered outstanding, one naturally had to not only know how to do it, but also master it. It was impossible to do it without putting in some effort. How could a child have that kind of self-awareness? Would he have that kind of patience? How could he have that kind of willpower? Or could it be that she was really a genius who could learn many things at once and master them after learning them a little more? One had to know that Sun Yijia was such an outstanding noble lady. She had been raised under high-pressure policies. Or perhaps, there was another possibility. She actually had the same fate as him. Then, was it a transmigration or a rebirth? Jingwan carefully sized up Wan Fangfei, trying to find something from her to prove her guess. However, in such a short period of time, there naturally wouldn't be any results. Sun Yijia and Wan Fangfei greeted each other. Then, Wan Fangfei's gaze fell on Jingwan. I wonder which family this young lady is from. I have never seen such a beautiful younger sister before. You must have just come to the capital? Her smile was faint, but it made people feel very comfortable. This is the granddaughter of Luo Shangshu. She is the third child. Her name is Jingwan. She just came to the capital with old Madame Luo a few days ago. Sun Yijia introduced. Jingwan timely squatted down. Hello, Miss Ruan. Wan Fangfei hurriedly returned the greeting. Who doesn't know that our Miss Sun's taste is the most picky? To be able to catch Miss Sun's eye in such a short period of time, I presume that the third Miss Luo is extremely outstanding in all aspects. Her eyes were clear and flawless as she teased with a smile. It was difficult to feel disgusted. Miss Ruan is too kind. I met Sister Jia probably because of fate. Compared to you and Sister Jia's unparalleled talents, I am just ignorant and vulgar. Enough, little Sister Wan, it's boring to be too modest. Sun Yijia pulled Jingwan's hand. It is said that everyone has their own strengths. Little Sister Wan's expertise is not in this area. Wan Fangfei looked at Sun Yijia's actions and her eyes flashed slightly. Why did she feel that Sun Yijia seemed to be deliberately putting on a show for her to see? It was as if she was announcing that this was her person and that she should not have any ideas. This childlike behavior could only mean that she cared. She couldn't help but look at Jingwan again. How should she put it? She felt that this was a very unique woman. She didn't have the kind of beautiful face that would attract people's attention at first sight. However, once you noticed it, it was difficult to ignore it. No matter how beautiful others were, it was difficult to make her disappear in the crowd. Also, the leisurely aura that came from her bones was very attractive. Wan Fangfei covered her mouth and laughed. Miss Sun, are you worried that I will snatch you away? Yes, it's mainly because little Sister Wan is too attractive. I'm worried that if I don't keep an eye on her, she will forget about me. Sun Yijia said very frankly. What nonsense are you talking about? Jingwan gently pinched her. Sun Yijia immediately put on a wronged expression and pretended to be in pain as she rubbed the place where she was pinched. I'm talking nonsense. I have evidence. Jingwan didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her. Okay, don't be agitated. Be careful of the wound. It hurts. Sun Yijia stretched her hand to her lips like a child and wanted to blow on it. And the sound she made at the end of it was simply enough to give people goosebumps. Jingwan was extremely speechless. Was she addicted to playing with her? Seeing her stubbornly stretching out her hand, as if she wouldn't give up if she didn't satisfy her request, Jingwan unhappily blew on her hand twice. This scene made Wan Fangfei quite surprised. She didn't have much contact with Sun Yijia, but she was very clear about her temperament. Was she actually like another person in private? It shouldn't be possible. If that was really the case, there wouldn't be no news at all. Then, was it just because of the Luo family's third young lady? It was very interesting. Looking at the Luo family's third young lady who was obviously younger, but had a doting attitude, this scene was really heartwarming. It was really dazzling to the eyes. She really wanted to destroy it. There are so many flowers, what are they for? Wan Fangfei once again brought up the initial question. Originally, the four of us came to admire the flowers, but now that it's not convenient for them to come out, we are preparing to fold some back to make vases. Jingwan explained, her tone a little lighter. Wan Fangfei's smile froze. Sorry, I don't know. If you want to talk about this, I am also responsible. If the cart driver can control it, perhaps, this matter naturally has nothing to do with Miss Ruan. Miss Ruan has also been frightened, so there's no need to take it to heart. Miss Luo is magnanimous. I'm just stating facts. Jingwan smiled faintly. It was just that Wan Fangfei's injury wasn't serious and now she really looked like nothing had happened. However, she had been unconscious for a long time and didn't wake up until the people from the capital came yesterday. But after waking up, she was in good spirits and shouldn't have been frightened. She had underestimated the endurance of these girls. Miss, let's go back. You've been out for a long time and the old madam should be worried. The servant girl beside Wan Fangfei said. Jingwan was still thinking why it wasn't Wan Fangfei's mother who came, but then she reacted. This old madam was Ruan Fangfei's mother. She was young, but her seniority was high. Jingwan sometimes felt helpless and sad about the matter of old cows eating young grass in this world. These girls didn't marry at 17 or 18 and were considered old ladies. Without any status, they were arranged to be the second wives of those who could be their fathers or even their grandfathers. As for the men, they were already in their 50s or 60s and no one would say anything about them eating those 13 or 14-year-old girls. Men were still like flowers at the age of 40 and women at the age of 40 could be classified as old people. This was how unfair it was. Ruan Fangfei came and left just like that. It seemed that because she was bored in her room, she came out to get some fresh air and some wind. Then, she plucked a peach blossom on the way. The two continued to pluck flowers. Little sister Wan, do you think Miss Ruan's appearance here is a coincidence or something else? Jingwan tilted her head to look at her. Sun Yijia was plucking flowers. She plucked one and reached for the next one. She was quiet, but there seemed to be something else in this silence. No matter what it is, it probably has nothing to do with us. Sun Yijia finally turned to look at Jingwan. Little sister Wan, what do you think of Miss Sun? It's just the first time I met her. It was only a short time and a few words. I didn't feel anything. Little sister Wan, do you know? When I was young, my mother always told me that Miss Ruan, who was 2 months younger than me, never needed my parents to worry about her. As for you, you only thought about playing all day long. If Miss Ruan learned something but I didn't and couldn't learn it well, my mother would ask the female teacher to hit my hand. It hurt so much. At that time, I hated Miss Ruan very much. Every time I saw her, I wanted to rush up and hit her, but I couldn't. Then, I tried my best to learn. I thought that if I surpassed her, my mother wouldn't say that she was good and wouldn't hit me. Later, I got used to it. I didn't need anyone to urge me. I learned by myself. I didn't have to learn everything that she knew. I just learned some things that I liked. Until now, she's still so perfect that it's unreal. Jingwan guessed that Sun Yijia grew up under pressure. However, she didn't expect that there would be a child from another family in her life, and this person's influence on her was so great. However, Jingwan noticed Sun Yijia's last sentence, so perfect that it's unreal. This kind of person often hid a side that others didn't know. This kind of person always had 7 emotions and 6 desires. When they were affected by negative emotions, they always needed a way to vent. She had never shown her emotions in the places that others could see. Then, what about the places that others couldn't see? If it was just a normal way to vent, such as crying, it would be fine. However, there was another kind of person who was called a pervert. Of course, Jingwan wouldn't speculate about others with malice. Maybe Ruan Fangfei was just a little picky and pursued perfection. Maybe she really had a life like her, so her emotions wouldn't be easily affected. As for whether she was a pervert or not, Jingwan didn't think of deliberately finding out. It had nothing to do with her, right? However, if it wasn't a coincidence, and Ruan Fangfei really wasn't as perfect as she looked, her purpose of coming here might be to see with her own eyes whether Sun Yijia, who was as famous as her, was really disfigured. She used to have 2 first places. Now, she was unique. It should be something to be happy about, right? Sister Jia, do you care a lot? How could I care? Therefore, Ruan Fangfei's appearance was thrown to the back of their minds. Each of them held 2 peach blossoms in their hands. The big baskets in the hands of the maidservants were also full. However, they didn't go back directly. They went to many other places to look. Although White Dragon Temple was famous for its peach blossoms, it didn't mean that there were no other flowers. They more or less picked some. Jingwan even asked the maidservants to pick a lot of wild flowers and bring them back. Because Yuan Chaoqiao and Zhou Yingshuang lived in the same courtyard, they simply moved the two of them to the courtyard. It was inconvenient for them to move, so they just looked and smelled at the side. Regarding Jingwan's flower arrangement, the people around her had long been accustomed to it. Although they still felt that it was amazing every time they saw it. It was the first time for the others to see it. Although the peach blossoms were beautiful, there were a lot of them placed together, and there were other miscellaneous things. However, under Jingwan's hands, they were trimmed and trimmed. No matter if it was a basket or a vase, she could quickly arrange them into various shapes. Coupled with some other embellishments, it was clearly the same thing, but it felt different when looking at it. It was simply too beautiful. Sun Yijia and Yuan Chaoqiao stared at Jingwan and couldn't help but praise. So amazing. Jingwan smiled and didn't say anything. Seeing Zhou Yingshuang's anxious and lonely expression, she moved the finished flower arrangement to a place where she could touch it. Yingshuang, smell it. Not far away, the two madams also couldn't help but nod. Madame Zhou said to Jingwan's aunt, Luo Ronghui, your family's daughter's skills are also superb. She has always lived with my mother in Qi and Prefecture. Today is also the first time I've seen her. After a moment of silence, Luo Ronghui continued, my mother doted on her the most. My mother is a person who clearly distinguishes between love and hate. If she likes someone, she likes them. If she doesn't like them, she doesn't like them. She doesn't care about sand in her eyes. It is very difficult for ordinary people to enter her eyes, but she has always placed third lass at the top of her heart and doted on her. Third lass, in fact, is really a good child. Madame Zhou actually understood Luo Ronghui's meaning. Seeing that Jingwan was always concerned about her daughter, she said, I know this matter can't be blamed on her, but it is hard for me to accept it at the moment. More importantly, our family's Yingshuang is currently discussing marriage with the son of the Imperial College's chancellor. They were even about to exchange marriage invitations, but she suddenly lost her sight. This matter is very likely to fail. Tell me, how can I not feel sad? As she spoke, she couldn't help but cry. Don't cry. They are happy right now. If they hear this, it will be very disappointing. Speaking of which, Lord Chancellor is a kind person. It is not impossible for your family's Yingshuang to regain her sight. Perhaps there won't be any problems with the marriage. Luo Ronghui consoled. Madame Zhou wiped away her tears, I hope so. Little sister Wan, please teach us. Sun Yijia looked at her expectantly. Okay. Actually, it is not difficult. Jingwan conveniently sat beside Zhou Yingshuang and asked the servant girls to bring scissors and other things. Then, as she spoke, she taught Zhou Yingshuang how to cut her hand. From time to time, she whispered a few words to her. Zhou Yingshuang smiled very happily. She touched her hand when she couldn't see. Even if she was accidentally pricked, she didn't care. When Sun Yijia and Yuan Chaoqiao saw this, they looked at each other and smiled at the same time. Although they were in a bad situation when they first arrived at White Dragon Temple, it was also a good thing that they could still gather together happily. Actually, things like flower arrangement were more or less common for unmarried women. The basic things were not difficult. The key was that Jingwan taught them some small skills, which were very useful. She is the youngest, but the most considerate one who knows how to take care of others. If I were your mother, I would definitely like such a considerate girl. Madame Zhou replied. Luo Ronghui smiled, our family's Chao Chao has been sick and listless before. Otherwise, she would complain that her leg hurts. But now, she is so happy that she has forgotten all about it. Yes, this situation is already much better than expected. Their mood is better now, so I think they will recover faster. Young miss, the things you asked for are here. Nurse Gong led a group of people to carry a large and heavy wooden box. What is this? Yuan Chao Chao asked curiously. Jingwan did not keep them in suspense. She opened the wooden box and found that it was filled with square blocks of mud. You asked the monks to help you with this. What are you going to do with this? Sun Yijia was puzzled. Of course it is to arrange flowers. Without further explanation, she directly started to do it. She brought over a table and piled up the mud blocks one by one. Some places were higher, while others were lower. Of course, Jingwan did not need to do it herself. The servant girls would do it according to her instructions. After the first step was completed, Jingwan started to decorate it. She did not touch the originally square blocks of mud. Instead, she decorated them with leaves, branches, and some wildflowers of different sizes and colors. When she stopped, the mud blocks no longer had their original angular appearance. They were completely a large and beautiful flower arrangement base. Soon after, Jingwan started to arrange flowers on top of this base. Because it was all soft mud, it was naturally easy to arrange. The flower arrangement that took up more than half of the table quickly took shape under Jingwan's hands. The flower arrangement they had seen before was basically the bouquet in the vase. This was the first time they knew that flower arrangement could be done this way. Sun Yijia could not help but walk forward. She wanted to reach out and touch it, but she seemed to be afraid that she would damage it. She could only praise, "It is really beautiful." Luo Ronghui and Zhou Furen could not help but gather around to take a look. Miss Luo's hands are really skillful. I don't deserve Furen's praise. It's just that I thought a little more than others. In fact, anyone can do it. But it's just that you thought a little more than others. Jingwan slightly blushed. This was not what she thought. She just saw a little more, but she could not explain it. Mother, don't block it. Let me take a good look. Yuan Chao Chao could not help but say. Okay, I'll let you. Luo Ronghui moved to the side. Zhou Yingshuang was the only one who couldn't see the hustle and bustle. She was anxious, but she just lay there quietly, imagining the special flower arrangement. During the whole process, the maidservant whispered into her ear in detail. She tried her best to imagine it, but she felt very empty. She did not feel that it was very beautiful. It was somewhat powerless. Her hand was suddenly grasped. Jingwan's soft words rang in her ear, "When your eyes are better, I will arrange flowers for you. There are all kinds of flowers. You said it. When the time comes, if you do not meet my requirements, I will not comply." Zhou Yingshuang gently shook Jingwan's hand. Jingwan was true to her words. There were many more flower arrangements, filling Yuan Chao Chao and Zhou Yingshuang's room. Their side was harmonious, but Li Hongyuan's side was not so wonderful. Ruan Fangfei deliberately went after knowing that Wan Wan and the others went to the peach forest. She did not react when she saw Sun Yijia. Instead, her attention was more on Wan Wan. Replying to Master, "Yes." Li Hongyuan's understanding of Ruan Fangfei was that she was unusually cold, but she never thought that there was anything wrong with her. As for whether she was jealous of other outstanding women, he really did not know, nor was he interested in knowing. However, she inexplicably stared at Wan Wan, so he could not ignore it. Li Hongyuan quietly pondered for a moment. After a while, he said, "Prepare the people. When Wan Wan returns to the capital, immediately send them to her." In addition, Ruan Fangfei's side cannot be relaxed. The capital is always paying attention to how Imperial Father will deal with this matter. This prince wants to know as soon as possible. Yes. In fact, whether it was Eunuch Mu or an E, in this case, why didn't he directly deal with Ruan Fangfei? Or, did he really have feelings for Miss Ruan in his heart? Li Hongyuan glanced at them, and the two immediately abandoned the thoughts in their hearts, as if they were afraid that their master could see through it. In the next few days, Jingwan's group of 4 lived very peacefully and happily. Jingwan not only made flower arrangements for them, but also taught them how to make rouge with peach blossoms as the main ingredient. There were 1 or 2 times when she even carried Yuan Chao Chao and Zhou Yingshuang out on a soft couch and ran all over the mountain. They were happy, but those rough old maids were a bit suffering. However, for the sake of these older sisters, Jingwan could only apologize to them. As for the 3 Furins, seeing that their young ladies were happy and their bodies were recovering quickly, even if their words and deeds were a bit out of line, they would turn a blind eye. They often gathered together and talked happily. Perhaps Sun Yijia was used to it, so she didn't say anything about her mother's absence. Li Hongyuan didn't attack every day or night, but at least once every other night. Fortunately, except for one night when he gave Jingwan some calming medicine and hugged her to sleep, the rest of the time he just looked at her and left after sitting for an hour. This kind of life lasted for 7 or 8 days, and Li Hongyuan waited for news from the capital. Bestowed marriage. Imperial father bestowed Sun Yijia to this prince. Li Hongyuan gently knocked on the table. You know that this prince likes beautiful women, but bestowed a disfigured one to this prince. Because this prince's whereabouts are unknown, you don't know about this matter and won't disobey the imperial decree, right? They all lowered their heads and didn't dare to breathe loudly. Speaking of which, how many times had their master been bestowed a marriage? Go and arrange for Wan Fangfei to be bestowed to this prince as a side consort. The time can be delayed. It can be delayed for 10 days or half a month. https://11/11/11807/6652962. Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website, M. Chapter 81. There had been no news of Li Hongyuan these days, and the case of the flower market didn't find anything important as he wished. However, it was more or less proved that his good sons were involved in it. It was just that none of them gained anything in the end. Lu Qingdi had been in a state of rage. In order to warn them, several groups of people were found to be important scapegoats. Nobody knew how many people's black veils had been stolen and how many people's blood had been stained. The princes all hid themselves obediently and didn't dare to act rashly. Even the people sent to White Dragon Temple were all withdrawn after receiving some specious news. Lu Qingdi sent people to the nearby villages and towns where White Dragon Temple was located. They constantly expanded the search area, including the river where Li Hongyuan fell into. He had been salvaged back and forth countless times. It was true that no one found him alive or dead. After so many days, they still couldn't find him. Most likely, he had been eaten by fish. Shut up. Lu Qingdi was furious. He just didn't believe that his scourge of a son was dead. Perhaps it was really because Ding General Manor had enjoyed supreme glory for nearly 100 years. Among the 4 dukes and 9 marquises who founded the country, Ding General Manor was the only one that stood firm. Therefore, in Duke Ding's subconscious mind, he could do whatever he wanted as long as it was not a crime of treason. Therefore, when Lu Qingdi was angry, he repeatedly ran to Lu Qingdi and cried that his poor daughter, who was in the prime of her life, was disfigured and her life was over. Lu Qingdi actually knew Duke Ding's purpose. He just wanted to give him a son-in-law that he liked. At this time, the Empress should have dissuaded her brother. However, for the sake of her son, she not only didn't dissuade him but also pretended to persuade Lu Qingdi. She said that her brother loved his daughter very much and only had one precious daughter. If his daughter's face was disfigured, it would only delay her marriage, and Lu Qingdi only needed to say a word to solve it. He said it so casually, as if Lu Qingdi's one word was enough to decide everything. Emperor Lu Qingdi laughed. which made Empress Sun inexplicably frightened. After that, she felt uneasy. Sure enough, something bad happened the next day. An imperial edict of marriage, written by Emperor Luqingdi himself, was read out in front of all the civil and military officials in the morning court. Once the imperial edict was issued, there was no room for regret. Seeing that more than half of the people in the imperial court were stunned, Luqingdi felt a sense of satisfaction. Don't think that Luqingdi didn't know that his eldest son's marriage with Sun Yijia was ruined by that vile spawn. Don't think that he didn't know that the Empress and the others wanted to use the marriage to rope in people. In order to find another good wife, Duke Dinggua's mansion was picking left and right and running around in many ways. Those who didn't know would think that he loved his daughter very much. And those who knew, many people secretly mocked him. This was not marrying his daughter, but selling her. To put it bluntly, it was no different from goods waiting for a high price. Whoever gave the highest price would be able to marry the unparalleled beauty. The power of Duke Ding's mansion was there, and the eldest son of the emperor had the highest possibility of ascending the throne. After all, he was the eldest son of the emperor. His ability was not the best among the princes, but it was not bad either. In terms of etiquette and law, it was justifiable for him to ascend the throne. Naturally, there were so many people who were eager to make a move, so that the rumors between Sun Yijia and the eldest son of the emperor, Prince Kong, could be ignored. Unfortunately, before the dust settled, something happened to Sun Yijia. It had to be said that Sun Yijia's existence in this transaction was equivalent to a token. As long as she existed well, that was her greatest value. Then, whether her face was intact or not wasn't that important. However, if they really voluntarily married such a woman, the transaction would be put on the table. Some things were very good to know, but they couldn't be exposed to the surface. Face was very important to a family. If they only cared about benefits and didn't ask about anything else, it would only be criticized. Duke Ding's behavior was just to let Luqingdi issue an edict to save their face. After all, it was difficult to take the emperor's order. They had obviously gained benefits, but they still pretended that they had no choice. Sun Yijia, including Jingwan, and even Sun Yilin, who had just been involved in the officialdom, only thought that Sun Yijia, who was disfigured, would be abandoned. Who would have thought that Duke Ding would go to such an extent? He didn't give her a way out at all. How bitterly disappointed and sad it was. And this time, it could be regarded as a lesson to them. Never underestimate some people's cold-bloodedness and shamelessness. Unfortunately, they miscalculated one thing. Luqingdi was indeed a relatively moderate emperor. He didn't make decisions on the court, nor did he have the ambition to expand the territory of Qi Yuan. However, it didn't mean that he didn't have a temper and would be led by the nose by a group of people. If they really annoyed him, no one would have a good time. Duke Ding, aren't you worried that your daughter won't be able to get married? Fine, now I'll give my son to you as your son-in-law. I've given you a lot of face. What? Are you dissatisfied with my son, Duke Ding? No, Your Majesty. Jin Qinhuang is handsome, elegant. Your daughter, even before her disfigurement, was barely worthy of him. What she looks like now, although I haven't seen it, I can imagine it. Seeing that Duke Ding has always been loyal and devoted, I can't bear to see my beloved officials worry all day long, so I reluctantly set your daughter as Jin Qinhuang's consort. Luqingdi put on an attitude that he had suffered a great loss for Duke Ding. He almost directly said, "Son, I've let you down. I've chosen such a Wang Fei for you, but I have no choice. Duke Ding is wholeheartedly devoted to the country. I can't chill the officials' hearts, so I can only wrong you to solve my worries for me. Duke Ding, my son is highly talented, knowledgeable, and skilled in both civil and military affairs. Now, he wants to marry your daughter. He's sacrificed so much, don't you feel embarrassed if you don't prepare more dowry for your daughter? When the courtiers listened to Luchingdi's tearful narration, they couldn't help but lower their heads again and again, covering the twitching corners of their mouths. Your Majesty, can you still have a little face? Even if you praise your son as if he's unparalleled in the heavens, you can't change the fact that he has no good points except for his face. There's also that rotten reputation. Even if you don't like Duke Ding, you have to say that even the disfigured Miss Sun is wrong to marry your son. Also, counting with your fingers, from the time Jin Qinhuang left the palace until now, how many times have you bestowed a marriage? The 7th time, the 7th time. There's no one else who can jinx his wife to this extent. Just because you're the emperor, you can't disregard someone else's daughter's life, right? Also, there's still no news from Jin Qinhuang. Most likely. Was he preparing to hold a ghost marriage for Sun Yijia to be the widow, or what? Even if some people knew the actual situation of Li Hongyuan, they believed that he wouldn't easily get into trouble, so they couldn't argue for Luchingdi. Although you praised your son by a fluke, there wasn't a single mistake. His temperament was unpredictable, and his temperament was still acceptable. Even adding on the reputation of jinxing his wife, they were still willing to send their daughters to Jin Qinhuang Fu to serve him. It was only jinxing his wife, not being a legitimate wife was enough, but alas, sending their own daughters to him would only be a waste, and they wouldn't be able to reap any benefits. It's better not to think about using this method to climb up the ranks. Duke Ding knelt in the main hall. Not to mention that his abacus had fallen through, Luchingdi also named him to give a generous dowry to compensate his son. Beloved minister's son. Duke Ding quivered, this official thanks your majesty for your grace. For my daughter to be able to marry Jin Qinhuang as a consort, it's the good fortune of 3 lifetimes. It's good that beloved minister knows. Luchingdi was satisfied. If the people around Li Hongyuan saw the current Luchingdi, they would probably be able to find the reason for their master's shamelessness. They were simply father and son in the same vein. Luchingdi's sudden imperial edict hadn't been dismissed yet, so the entire harem knew about it. After a moment of shock, some people were completely dumbfounded, while others clapped and laughed. The emperor's move was simply a stroke of genius. Not only did it disrupt the plans of the empress and the eldest prince, but it also made Duke Ding's Fu suffer a double loss. Jin Qinhuang was imperial consort Su's adopted son. The mother and son relationship was deep, so it was absolutely impossible for him to stand on the empress's side. Moreover, Sun Yijia was disfigured. Even if she could successfully marry into Jin Qinhuang Fu, being a living widow was considered light. Jin Qinhuang, who only loved beauties, might hate her, which was equivalent to forming a death grudge. If Duke Ding's Fu defected to imperial consort Su's side, the situation could be eased and Sun Yijia could live a better life. However, Duke Ding's Fu was the empress and the eldest prince's hardcore supporters. The final result was that Sun Yijia was completely reduced to a useless chess piece and no longer had any use. There was also that Sun Yilin, who couldn't stand in the court, but was also the inner court's official in the palace. When he heard about it, he almost broke the brush in his hand. He originally wanted to fight for a chance for his younger sister. Unfortunately, because of that good father of his, he thoroughly angered the emperor. Now, it was too late. Everything was too late. Although he had the emperor's favor and trust, it was far from being able to make the emperor take back his order. So hateful, really hateful, Sun Yilin had never regretted it like this. If he didn't back down from the beginning, if he climbed up from the beginning, how could he not have any right to speak now? The veins on his clenched fists were bulging, his teeth were clenched, and his eyes were gloomy as if they were about to drip out. His whole body exuded a malicious aura, which made the little eunuchs serving in the inner court tremble. They only felt that how could the usually genial and elegant Gongzi be so terrifying? Sun Yilin gradually restrained his emotions after a long while. He slightly lowered his head, looked at his palm, and whispered, "Good younger sister, just wait. Even if you marry into Jin Qinhuang Fu, I will make sure that Jin Qinhuang doesn't dare to neglect you even a little bit." When Duchess Dingguo Furen learned of this news, her eyes darkened and she almost fainted, scaring the people who served her. It wasn't easy for her to calm down, but she couldn't stop her tears from falling down. Her poor daughter, oh. These days, she tried to dissuade Duke Dingguo. Her daughter was already so pitiful, she shouldn't really force her into a dead end. However, it was useless. She could only hope that even if the future son-in-law didn't like her daughter, it was fine to let her live her own life in the inner court, as long as he didn't treat her harshly. Now it was all over, all over. Jin Qinhuang, that living king of hell, her daughter might die in his hands one day. Duke, you are so cruel and don't care about the affection between father and daughter. Then, from now on, don't blame me for being ruthless. Later, this matter spread all over the capital. Originally, there weren't many people who knew about Sun Yijia's disfigurement. Because of her father's unbridled publicity, not to mention the common people, at least those officials knew about it. Now that they knew that Sun Yijia had such a result, there were fewer people who rejoiced in her misfortune. It was a pity, really a pity. Ah. What's a pity? She can still be a Wangfei after being disfigured. I say, her life is especially good. There was no lack of people who said this. But Jin Qinhuang's reputation, and even now, we don't know if he's dead or alive. His Majesty is aware of this situation and still issued an imperial edict to grant marriage. Then Sun Yijia must be married. It depends on whether she marries a dead person or a living person. But no matter what, she is still a Wangfei. Ah. It sounds so majestic. I say, if Jin Qinhuang is really gone, it would be better for Miss Sunday. If he is still alive, I don't know if Miss Sun can safely survive until the day of her marriage. I heard that none of Jin Qinhuang's previous fiancés had a good end. If they didn't die, they were injured, and even their chastity was destroyed. Duchess Dingguo Furen originally didn't intend to send a letter to Sun Yijia, but she would know sooner or later. If she came back and was caught unprepared to face this bad news, it would be better to tell her in advance and let her be mentally prepared. She hardened her heart and personally wrote a letter, letting the servants whip the horse to send it to Bai Long Temple. Compared to Li Hongyuan, who used pigeons to send letters, they received the news before the morning court was over. Sun Yijia's side was naturally much slower. She was originally happy, but after Sun Yijia opened the letter and read it, her body went limp and she almost fell to the ground. Jia Jijie. Jingwan quickly stepped forward to support her. She saw that her eyes were absent-minded, as if she had lost her soul in an instant. What's wrong? What happened? She carefully asked, thinking that Duke Dingguo Furen had caused trouble again, but she didn't get a response from Sun Yijia. Jingwan frowned and reached out to pick up the letter that fell to the ground. Although it was rude to privately read other people's letters, she couldn't care so much now. After a closer look, Jingwan's face also became very unsightly. This letter clearly stated the cause and effect of the marriage. Jingwan, what's wrong? Yuan Chao saw them like this and couldn't help but ask anxiously. These days, she got along with Sun Yijia, so their relationship naturally improved by leaps and bounds. They were already close friends. She knew that something big must have happened, so she was very worried. Zhou Yingshuang also had a face full of doubts. Jingwan looked at Sun Yijia, the pit of her stomach feeling uncomfortable. She opened her mouth with difficulty. Duke Dingguo used Jia Jijia's face injury as an excuse to pretend to be pitiful in an attempt to have His Majesty decree a marriage. He angered His Majesty, so His Majesty bestowed Jia Jijia to Jin Qinhuang. What? Yuan Chaoqiao and Zhou Shuang were so shocked that they almost sat up. How could this be? Why did it have to be Jin Qinhuang? Even if he is a scholar, he is still a powerful country's Jin Qinhuang. Isn't this pushing Yijia into the fire pit? Jingwan didn't have a comprehensive understanding of the rumors about Jin Qinhuang, but just knowing that was enough to determine that this person was definitely not a good match. She also understood that many things were actually exaggerated, but the 22-year-old Jin Qinhuang didn't have a proper female master in the Fu. This was very clear that there was a problem. Moreover, based on the things he did to her that night, she could basically conclude that there was still a white moonlight in his heart and a cinnabar at the tip of his heart. She was clear about a man's bad nature. The more he couldn't get it, the more he wanted it. And what if that woman appeared again? Once that heart was partial to a woman, it would become unreasonable. Marrying such a person, it would be very difficult to live her own life without caring about anything in the inner courtyard. In order to make room for the person in his heart, perhaps she could do all kinds of crazy things. If Li Hongyuan knew of Jingwan's thoughts, wouldn't he vomit 3 liters of blood? However, Jingwan's last thought was really not wrong. A certain king of hell did a lot of crazy things in order to leave the position of D-wife unsullied for her. Jingwan held Sun Yijia's shoulder, not knowing how to comfort her. Perhaps the saddest thing in her heart wasn't that she was bestowed a marriage to Jin Qinhuang, but her father's actions. Jia Jijia, Jin Qinhuang may not be so unbearable. Jingwan said against her heart. Not so unbearable. Yuan Chaoqiao suddenly became agitated. My good younger cousin, that is because you are not in the capital and do not know that person Jin Qinhuang. Let me tell you, that person Jin Qinhuang is cruel and callous. He eats human flesh, drinks human blood, is greedy for flowers and is lecherous. He does not discriminate between men and women, whether it is hot or cold. As long as it is a beauty, he has his eyes on it. No matter if it is fragrant or stinky, he will get it in his hands. In the capital, there is also another courtyard where he specially keeps beauties. I heard that there are even mother and daughter inside. Just because he has taken a fancy to a married woman, it is not the first or second time that he has caused the family to be ruined and the family to perish. He is also fickle and cold-blooded. Qiao Qiao, shut up. Because Yuan Chaoqiao raised her voice, it attracted the attention of several Furens on the other side. Hearing Yuan Chaoqiao's words, Luo Ronghue almost fainted from anger and hurriedly rushed over. Are these words for a girl like you to say? Is Jin Qinhuang something you can talk about? You don't want your life anymore. He poked her forehead hatefully. When did I talk about it? This is clearly something that everyone knows. Why can't I say it? Jin Qinhuang dares to do it. Is he afraid of being talked about? You're still talking. Luo Ronghue wished he could cover her mouth. Cough, 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 cough. Probably because she was too agitated, Yuan Chaoqiao violently coughed. My little ancestor, quickly stop for a moment. Luo Ronghue hurriedly patted her back and took the water handed over by the maidservant to feed her. Jingwan was also shocked by Yuan Chaoqiao's explosive news. It wasn't until she heard Yuan Chaoqiao's coughing that she came back to her senses and hurriedly went forward to appease her. Okay, I know. You calm down a bit. What they didn't know was that Yuan Chaoqiao's words were coincidentally heard by a certain person who was bored and came to the corner to eavesdrop. Only separated by a few bushes of flowers and trees, Li Hongyuan's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He almost lost his reason and directly went out to strangle Yuan Chaoqiao to death. Eunuch Mu's shadow guards who were hidden in the dark shrunk their necks and acted like ostriches. They were really afraid that he would take his anger out on them and drag them out to chop them up and feed them to the dogs. This cousin of the future Wang Fei was too daring. Even if it was a fact that everyone knew, she shouldn't say it so bluntly. Moreover, she said it to the future Wang Fei. It didn't matter if her own little life was targeted, but it would implicate others. Li Hongyuan broke a branch with a snap, which naturally alarmed Jingwan and the others. "Who is it?" Nanny Gong scolded and turned to look at the flower bushes. As expected, she met Li Hongyuan's gloomy eyes. She squatted down to greet him. In fact, she had noticed them when they came. After all, Eunuch Mu was not a person who practiced martial arts. Others might be able to hide, but Nanny Gong heard his footsteps clearly. Therefore, Nanny Gong went over as soon as she heard the sound, in case they were discovered by others because they didn't leave immediately. At that time, it would be strange if Li Hongyuan didn't do anything when they were caught talking bad about others. However, he couldn't kill them to silence them. Otherwise, his secret would be exposed. Chapter 82. This was probably the so-called heavens while playing tricks on people. Sun Yijia was not young anymore, and Li Hongyuan was even more so. In addition, there were always problems with his son's marriage over the years. Several of his younger brothers had already married and had families. Luqingdi was also anxious, so after issuing the edict, he directly asked the imperial astronomer to calculate the nearest auspicious date. The result was that it would be next month, 10 days after the imperial examination in spring. Therefore, Luqingdi decided to let his evil son get married immediately after the imperial examination in spring. For the imperial court, it could be regarded as a double blessing. As for his son, he hadn't found him yet. It didn't matter. He continued to look for him. Anyway, he firmly believed that he was still alive. If he could make it in time, he would marry himself. If he couldn't, he could use other methods to replace him. When he came back, he would directly consummate the marriage. His son was so beautiful. His future daughter-in-law was disfigured. It didn't matter. Once the light went out, she wouldn't look or touch. After giving birth to a legitimate son, she would have nothing to do with it. As the future princess, how could Sun Yijia not come back yet? Duke Ding, hurry up and bring your daughter back to prepare for the marriage. Luqingdi calmly gave out orders one by one. The Ministry of Rites should hurry up with the things that should be done, and the Ministry of Household Affairs should prepare the betrothal gifts. In short, even if you guys are as busy as dogs and exhausted to death, you have to make sure that my son's marriage is done perfectly. It was understandable that he set such a tight schedule. After all, Li Hongyuan was almost a veritable, crazy wife killer. However, after Luqingdi granted Li Hongyuan a marriage, he seemed to be no longer irritable or worried. Occasionally, he smiled amiably at the ministers and began to set foot in the harem again. He listened to music, enjoyed dancing, and drank fine wine. Nothing was left behind. It really made people look askance, including his close servants, puzzled. Because the contrast was too big, people couldn't help but wonder if Luqingdi had something they didn't know. For example, Li Hongyuan had been found a long time ago. The reason why he kept it a secret was because he wanted to use this opportunity to clean up the expanding power in the hands of his sons. He wanted them to know that the person sitting on the dragon throne was still their father. If they dared to think about something they shouldn't think about, no matter who they were, be careful that he would chop off their claws. This speculation was not without basis, because after the marriage decree, Luqingdi removed the black gauze of a group of officials. Although until now, they still hadn't found out who was the one who attacked Jin Qin Wang, or perhaps Luqingdi already knew, it was just that the murderer was too special. Luqingdi still caught a scapegoat and didn't even pin the crime of stabbing at Qin Wang. And the scapegoat was the same as before, he didn't belong to any side. Most likely, it was to confuse the public. Luqingdi's sons were secretly shocked by their father's means. In fact, Luqingdi was also very miserable. His men failed to find out the real culprit behind the scenes, and the clues that seemed to be clues vaguely pointed out that his good sons were vaguely involved in the flower market. What could he do? Kill his sons? That was absolutely impossible, not to mention that there was no definite evidence to let it go so easily. That also couldn't be done. His sons would have suffered in vain, and it would also increase the courage of the person behind the scenes. Thus, there was a method that wasn't a method. Jade Essence Palace, Imperial concubine Su and Li Hongyuan were drinking tea. At first, it was quiet and there was almost no sound. Mu Fei, what is Fu Wang doing? I can't see through his tricks at all, and Li. Sixth brother, is he really, Ming nothing will happen to Yuan Absolutely nothing will happen, do you understand? Imperial concubine Su stared at Li Hongming, her eyes slightly red. It was obvious that she hadn't rested well recently. It was obvious that she was enduring fear and worry, as if Li Hongming dared to say a bad word, the cup in her hand would be smashed at his head. What was wrong with Lu Qingdi? It was just that Yuan hadn't been found for a long time, so he probably had some hysteria. Li Hongyuan was too special for Lu Qingdi. The corners of Li Hongming's mouth twitched a little with a bit of unspeakable mockery, but he didn't know who the target of his mockery was. Every time it was related to Li Hongyuan, Mu Fei always stood on Li Hongyuan's side. Sometimes, he wondered if he was actually her adopted son. It had been more than 20 years, Mu Fei, you really worked hard. Mu Fei, you're right. How could something happen to sixth brother? Maybe he was saved by someone, and because of an accident, he hasn't been found yet. Imperial concubine Su's expression eased a little, as if she was comforted by Li Hongming. She held the cup and took a sip, but her hand trembled slightly and she almost dropped the cup. After the faint smoke, her expression became more and more haggard. That Miss Sun is good in all aspects, but after all, her face is disfigured. I'm worried that your sixth brother won't even be willing to enter the bridal chamber. After all, this time, your imperial father personally granted the marriage. What if he angers your imperial father again? Li Hongming restrained his emotions and chuckled, Mu Fei, you'd better worry. If sixth brother comes back and finds out that he was granted a disfigured princess, will he directly disobey the edict and make a big fuss? Otherwise, even if he doesn't disobey the edict, what if he sleeps in a brothel on the day of the wedding? It will be a big joke. Imperial concubine Su also rubbed her eyebrows with a headache. That was really something he would do. In the end, she could only smash the broken pot. Anyway, he has offended those he shouldn't have offended, and those he shouldn't have offended. This one doesn't make a difference. I'll discuss with your imperial father and see if we can choose 2 more beauties to compensate him. Li Hongming thought of the dancer he asked for from Li Hongyuan a few days ago. The taste was really good. Will sixth brother lack beauties? How can that be the same? Those women's statuses are too low. Yuan is right to send them to other courtyards. Their statuses are high, and they are beautiful enough. After going to Sunijia, there seems to be only one left in the big capital. Imperial concubine Su was startled when she heard this. Then, she said, Ming don't talk nonsense. Mu Fei, I'm not talking nonsense. You probably don't know, but Ruan Fangfei's marriage has been delayed, just like Sunijia. It's not because Grand Elder Ruan is picky, but because Ruan Fangfei admires sixth brother. Li Hongming's lips curled up. He was in a good mood when talking about this. Is this true? Imperial concubine Su asked in disbelief. Of course it's true. In fact, regarding this matter, if one paid attention, they would more or less know about it. Why didn't I pay attention before? Li Hongming was obviously annoyed that he only found out about such an important matter 2 days ago. Do you know why Miss Ruan is coincidentally at White Dragon Temple? It said that after hearing that sixth brother was punished, she followed. If it wasn't for the people sent to White Dragon Temple accidentally finding out, we would still be in the dark. Fortunately, it's not too late to find out now. I just don't know if my brothers also found out about this matter. Ming, you want to, it's probably because Grand Elder Ruan is suppressing it, so it didn't come out. Otherwise, Ruan Fangfei and sixth brother might even have a child. Since I'm interested, why not add fuel to the fire? If Grand Elder Ruan becomes sixth brother's father-in-law, could it be that he will cut ties with us? Grand Elder Ruan isn't an easy person to deal with. Moreover, if his beloved daughter becomes a concubine, it's possible that he won't be able to rope her in and might even become enemies. If everything comes from Miss Ruan's own hands, and she's willing. Sun Yijia obviously won't be liked by sixth brother and will only exist in name. If Ruan Fangfei enters Jin Qin Wang Fu, she will definitely be its Fei. Other than that, she will be the true mistress. Imperial concubine Su could compete with the Empress, but when it came to grandchildren, she couldn't raise her head. Therefore, Imperial concubine Su actually cared a lot about Qian Shi's child. In comparison, Li Hongming didn't really care because he knew very well that in this life and death battle, it wasn't important at all whether he had a son or not. According to normal circumstances, the throne couldn't be his. This was destined from the beginning, so why should he waste so much time on those women? When he ascended the throne in the future, he could have any woman he wanted and as many sons as he wanted. Then this official will withdraw first. Li Hongming had just left the palace and got on the carriage when his personal attendant told him, Wang Ye, Jin Qin Wang has been found, Shang'an O? He's really lucky. Regardless of whether Li Hongyuan was alive or dead, Li Hongming didn't have much of a reaction. However, he knew from his Mufei's words and actions that Li Hongyuan being alive was far more beneficial than harmful to him. Therefore, even though he really wanted him to die, he still hoped that he would live until Luqing Emperor passed away, live until he successfully ascended the throne. Li Hongming knew that there were things he didn't know. However, on the surface, Li Hongyuan made enemies on all sides, and even if he was messing with him, he didn't show any mercy. But overall, the losses he caused to others were far greater than him. The trouble he created for him might have made people gnash their teeth in hatred at the time, but in reality, it didn't matter. Tell Ben Wang the details. Yes. After Jin Qin Wang was injured and fell into the water, he was fished out by a large white ape not long after. Wait, large white ape? Are you sure? Li Hongming asked incredulously. The news from White Dragon Temple indeed said so. Many people have seen that large white ape. It's taller than a person and has extraordinary strength. It said that the large white ape was raised by a traveling doctor. That person just happened to enter White Dragon Mountain to pick herbs some time ago. That white ape might have stayed with the traveling doctor for a long time. Not to mention that it understood human nature, it could also help. I heard that it wasn't the first time it saved someone. The large white ape followed them into the mountain. Perhaps it recovered some of its original nature and scuttled all over the mountain. When it saw Jin Qin Wang who had fallen into the water, it brought him back. That traveling doctor's temperament was strange and he didn't fear the powerful. He clearly saw that Jin Qin Wang's identity was not ordinary, but he didn't interrupt the journey. Instead, he let the large white ape carry Jin Qin Wang into the depths of the mountain. Thus, Jin Qin Wang didn't follow the river downstream. The people sent by His Majesty couldn't find Jin Qin Wang. When that traveling doctor returned from picking herbs, Jin Qin Wang followed him out. The injuries on his body were already much better. In that case, Ben Wang's sixth brother's luck really isn't ordinary. There's no problem with that traveling doctor's identity. Replying to Wang Ye, there's no problem. Many people have seen him, especially those poor commoners. Many people have received his kindness. Li Hongyuan pondered. Right now, he wasn't sure if it was the truth or if everything was arranged by his Fu Wang so that Li Hongyuan could reasonably appear in front of people. If it was the latter, then this line was arranged too long. His Fu Wang was able to predict the future to this extent. After thinking about it carefully, Li Hongming was more inclined towards the former. Where is sixth brother, where is he now? Replying to Wang Ye, Jin Qin Wang is currently recuperating at White Dragon Temple. It's not known when he will return. His wedding is next month. There are still many things that require him to be busy. He won't stay at White Dragon Temple for too long. That's right, does he know that Fu Wang has bestowed a marriage to him? Perhaps he knows, or perhaps no one told him. After all, the imperial edict wasn't directly sent to White Dragon Temple. Ben Wang had forgotten. Ben Wang's future sixth sister-in-law is also at White Dragon Temple. Also, Ruan Fong Fei. Li Hongyuan smiled with interest. These two people should already know about this marriage. Sun Yijia might be completely disheartened, but Ruan Fong Fei's heart was full of admiration for the man that Sun Yijia didn't want to marry. Bumping into each other like this, even a woman like Ruan Fong Fei would be jealous, right? Once this kind of jealousy accumulated, it would be very easy to carry out some of his plans if he were to provoke her a little. The people in the plan were all at White Dragon Temple. That was a good place to carry out the plan. Unfortunately, it was already too late. If he knew about this earlier, it would be good. Next time, it wouldn't be so easy to find such a good opportunity. However, where there's a will, there's a way. Haste makes waste, especially when Fu Wang's body was still very healthy. He still had time to make arrangements. Wang Ye, the road ahead is blocked. What's the matter? Go take a look. Yes. The guard who went to inquire soon returned. Wang Ye, the carriage of great elder Princess Wingzhu collided with that of Luo Shangshu's granddaughter. Luo Shangshu's granddaughter. Do you know who she is? Li Hongming thought of the Luo family's third daughter last time. Wang Ye, it's the fourth daughter of the Luo family. Li Hongming pondered for a moment, got up, lifted the curtain, and got out of the carriage in person. What's the matter? Third cousin. The curtain of the carriage with the mark of great elder princess's mansion was lifted, revealing a 7 or 8-year-old girl. Third cousin, why are you here? Yu Yao. Li Hongming reached out to touch her head. Cousin has something to do and has to go back. What's the matter? The girl immediately pouted her mouth discontentedly, lifted the curtain wider, and motioned Li Hongming to look inside the carriage. The carriage broke my colored glass lamp. I came out today to get this lamp. I was going to give it to my mother as a birthday gift. Li Hongming saw that the beautiful colored glass lamp in the carriage was indeed broken in a corner, and then glanced at the pitiful figure in front of the carriage, biting her lips. Her clothes were not bad. Luo Shangshu's family was rich, but as far as he knew, the fourth daughter was the daughter of a concubine of Luo Shangshu, who was not very favored by Luo Shangshu, so their family was not very rich. This lamp cost at least 2,000 or 3,000 taels of silver. In addition, it seemed that the son of a concubine of Luo Shangshu was very close to his eldest brother's people. Li Hongming's mind had already turned a few times. At this moment, he saw that the girl was looking at him with expectant eyes. Li Hongming smiled comfortingly, and then turned to old lady Yu Yao. This thing is very precious. It will break if you touch it. The carriage is not a good place to play with it. This girl definitely did not do it on purpose. How about this? Cousin will give you a more beautiful one, and for cousin's sake, let's forget about this matter. How about it? Old lady Yu Yao was still hesitant. A qualified noble lady should be magnanimous. Okay, but cousin, remember to give me the colored glass lamp. Okay, I'll send it to you later. Li Hongming smiled gently. Then cousin, I'll go back first. I've been out for a long time. Mother will be worried. Okay, please send my regards to Aunt. I've been busy recently. I'll pay my respects to Aunt on her birthday. Old Lady Yuyao nodded. After sending Old Lady Yuyao away, Li Hongming took 2 steps towards Luo Jingying. Luo Jingying hurriedly saluted, greetings to Wang Ye. No need to be so polite. Li Hongming raised his hand, Miss, are you hurt? Thank you, Wang Ye. Chenu is fine. Li Hongming nodded, go back early. It's best to have a doctor take a look. Luo Jingying whispered yes, Wang Ye, Chenu will find a way to compensate Wang Ye for the colored glass lamp. Will Ben Wang be short of a colored glass lamp? Go back early. Li Hongming turned and got into the carriage. When the curtain of the carriage was put down, he saw Luo Jingying staring at him in a daze. He smiled softly. Unsurprisingly, he saw the other party blushing shyly. When the curtain fell, the smile on his face carried a bit of pride and sarcasm. Pride because he was always successful with women, but the irony was that these women were all the same. Li Hongming returned to the Rui Prince mansion. Although he didn't care if he had a son or not, it would be good to have one. After all, some of the officials who followed him had some opinions on this point. He didn't go overboard, but still asked indifferently. Knowing that it would take a long time, Li Hongming turned and went to the study. He would inform him when the child was born. Princess Rui was waiting outside the delivery room. Knowing that her Wang Ye wouldn't come, she didn't feel happy, but rather sad. She had been married to Prince Rui for a few years now, and everyone knew that they were deeply in love with each other. Being able to marry Prince Rui was a blessing accumulated from 8 lifetimes. The Gong Prince's mansion looked peaceful and quiet, but that was because the Gong Prince was afraid of his father-in-law. The Gong Qin Princess consort looked like she was living a happy life, but who knew how bitter it was inside. She was the best. Prince Rui was full of wisdom, an elegant gentleman, kind and capable, and was valued by the emperor, so he was very considerate to her. Princess Rui had a smile on her face, but her heart was bitter. Prince Rui didn't have much of a smile when he returned to the mansion. He was always busy. Rather than saying that he didn't get close to women, it was better to say that he didn't have time. Chapter 83. Master, concubine Qian has given birth to a young commandery princess. Li Hongming's close servant heard the noise outside the study and went out quietly. He came back quickly, but he was very careful when he spoke, for fear of making his master unhappy. Not to mention the masters, even the servants hoped that the baby would be a young master. Many people said that it would most likely be a boy. Why didn't they bring a son? I know. Let the princess arrange it. Do what you need to do. Li Hongming continued to write something. His expression didn't change from beginning to end, and he didn't raise his head. The speed of his writing was the same. Send someone to the palace to inform imperial concubine mother. Yes. Seeing that their master wasn't angry, they were relieved, but at the same time, they felt a little cold in their hearts. Outsiders said that they followed a good master. In fact, their master wasn't so easy to serve. Perhaps his gentleness and elegance were all used up outside the manor. It was rare to see him smile in the manor, and he was never soft-hearted to those who made mistakes. After noble consort Su got the news, she paused for a moment, and there was a trace of disappointment in her eyes. Then she put it away and let the servants around her give out the things they prepared. After that, she didn't do anything. When Qian Shi was pregnant, she could be said to be a treasure in the palm of the hand. If she could give birth to a son, she would still be a treasure. It was a pity that she gave birth to a daughter. Thus, other than the reward that was far below the norm, she did not receive anything. The promised position of concubine Qian was gone, and she still had to raise the debt collector who brought all these disasters to her. Originally, when she was still in the belly, she was told that if she gave birth to a son, he would be taken away, but she would be given the title of concubine Qian. She believed that she was pregnant with a son, so she put on the airs of concubine Qian. There were many people in the manor who flattered her, and they were disrespectful to Princess Rui. At that time, Princess Rui was very tolerant of her. Qian often scolded Princess Rui behind her back, saying that she was a hen that couldn't lay eggs and wanted to rob her son. She even planned to get her son back when she got the position of concubine. She also planned that if their prince ascended the throne, her son would be the eldest son, and then the emperor, and then she would be the noblest woman in the world. The child was still by her side, but her treatment directly fell from the clouds to the dust. The people who surrounded her all left in a flash. During confinement, she still had to eat leftovers. If she threw a tantrum and smashed things, she wouldn't even have anything to eat. The people in the kitchen sneered. That was the princess consort's kindness. The concubine's stomach, unfortunately, she didn't have that fortune. She only had the life of a concubine. She still wanted the same treatment as the princess consort. Was she dreaming? And those women who were envious of her all came to ridicule her. She used to be arrogant because of her belly, but now she was trampled on miserably. She shouted to see the prince. Unfortunately, even if she shouted until her throat was hoarse, no one paid attention to her. Then she cursed all kinds of things and was no surprise that her mouth was blocked. She was weak after giving birth. After this, she suffered from postpartum hemorrhage. She was about to die, but no one even called a doctor for her. Before she died, she forced herself to stand up and used her last breath to grab the swaddling clothes that she didn't like and threw far away. She didn't know when the crying stopped. It was less than 24 hours from the time she gave birth to the day she died. Princess, concubine Qian suffered from postpartum hemorrhage and died. Young commandery princess is weak, so she also died. Princess Rui was stunned for a moment. Bury her. Send more things to the Qian family. Tell the Ministry of Personnel to mention it to anyone in the Qian family. Prince, concubine Qian suffered from postpartum hemorrhage and died. Young commandery princess is weak, so she also died. Li Hongming still didn't raise his head, just report it to the princess. Why do you tell me? Princess, concubine Qian suffered from postpartum hemorrhage and died. Young commandery princess is weak, so she also died. Noble consort Su fiddled with the bracelet on her hand and said carelessly, she is unlucky. But she met a filial daughter. Knowing that she was lonely, she went to accompany her. If noble consort Su didn't make it so obvious when she rewarded things, even if it was a little bit more generous. If Li Hongyuan told her to take care of herself after giving birth and rewarded her casually. If Princess Rui left a little order to leave some people behind to stop the other concubines at the mountain gate and to hug the young commandery princess when they knew it was her, then Qianshi wouldn't have died, and that poor child wouldn't have been thrown to the side to fend for himself without even drinking a mouthful of milk. In the end, it was because these people were used to being aloof and regarded human lives as grass. They could ignore and do nothing for people who didn't benefit them. Princess Rui still felt pity for a woman like Qianshi, but that was it. She wouldn't find trouble for herself because of that bit of pity and extend a helping hand. No matter how pitiful and sad they were, they couldn't escape the fact that they stole her husband and could threaten her child at any time. At the same time, Jin Qinhuang returned to the capital. Unlike when they left the capital, they returned with great momentum. In addition to the Qinhuang ceremonial guards, there were also thousands of guards. Along the way, the people who were watching the excitement were addicted to their eyes. Although they were isolated by the guards, their interest didn't diminish at all. They didn't know who was in the carriage. Even at the foot of the Son of Heaven, there was still an insurmountable chasm between these ordinary people and those in power. Even those who knew the symbols of the families of the various officials and nobles in the capital, even those who understood Jin Qinhuang's character, only dared to secretly spit and didn't dare to brazenly show it. Jingwan's carriage followed behind and was also within the protection of the guards. It looked like Jin Qinhuang's family. When they left White Dragon Temple, they found out that Jin Qinhuang, who was assassinated, was also returning to the capital. Among the four of them, before this, only Jingwan knew that he was assassinated, including Sun Yijia. Duchess Ding never mentioned it to her. It wasn't until Sun Yijia received the news of her marriage and Zhangshi inadvertently mentioned it that they found out. Soon after, Jin Qinhuang was found and White Dragon Temple was placed under martial law. Because of the martial law, the matter became more and more conspicuous. In front of White Dragon Temple, the two sides faced each other. His face was expressionless, his eyes were cold, and he stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Even if he had an incomparably handsome face, it still made people shudder. In addition to that unapproachable aura, people didn't dare to rashly approach him. Yuan Chao Chao, who spoke ill of him 2 days ago, always felt that his gaze clearly fell on her body, like a poisonous snake that made people's hair stand on end. Sun Yijia calmly looked at him and didn't have the slightest intention of covering up the white cloth on her face. However, when she met his eyes, Sun Yijia understood that he already knew about the marriage between them. She couldn't see his opinion on this marriage from his face. However, it didn't matter, right? Zhou Yinshuang couldn't see anything, but that didn't mean that she couldn't feel the cold atmosphere around her. She couldn't help but shrink her body and didn't dare to breathe. The faces of the Furens were also not so good. Only Jingwan was affected the least by him. However, she still inexplicably felt that his gaze contained a deep meaning. It was very easy to understand. She was perhaps the only outsider who understood the real situation after his injury and was also the one who bluntly refused to enter Jin Qinhuang Fu. During these days of waiting for Li Hongyuan's decision, Jingwan's heart was actually still somewhat apprehensive. However, when she heard about his rather legendary rescue process, Jingwan knew that the matter of her intimate skin contact with him had already been completely overturned. However, through this matter, Jingwan also saw many more things. This Jin Qinhuang might not be like the rumors, blindly relying on the emperor's favor and only pursuing an extravagant and unfettered life. He had no power and didn't fight for power because he knew that she might have touched on something that shouldn't be touched. To a certain extent, she, including the Luo family, feared that they couldn't be separated from this Jin Qinhuang. The more you know, the faster you will die. If you don't want to die, then think of a way to make the other party trust you, even to the extent of treating you as a confidant. However, Jingwan didn't regret telling this matter to her grandmother and indirectly told her grandfather. Even if she told Jin Qinhuang that she didn't mention anything about saving him to anyone, the other party might not believe it. If he took this opportunity to secretly find the Luo family, then she could only rely on her grandfather to deal with it. Also, because of that different state of mind, she wasn't frightened by his imposing manner. Jingwan actually felt the imposing manner of a monarch descending to the world from his body. She had never seen the emperor's face and didn't know what kind of aura the so-called dragon's face and heavens might had. Her feelings told her that what Li Hongyuan wanted her to see was it. Jingwan very naturally moved her gaze away. However, it was at this moment that she inadvertently saw Ruan Fangfei on the other side. She clearly saw the way she looked at Li Hongyuan. If Jingwan was only a 14-year-old girl born and raised here, she probably wouldn't understand what that was. However, she wasn't. She was very clear on what that represented. Infatuation, possession, and even the desire to control. Jingwan couldn't help but tremble slightly. What about the lotus flower that emerged from the water? Would a normal girl have these kinds of feelings for such a terrifying man like Wang? If it was only admiration and infatuation, then it was fine. After all, he was a Wang and also had a good appearance. But possession and control, the depth of love might make one want to possess. Then what was it that made her want to control? That was already a psychological distortion that was somewhat perverted, okay? Was there some terrifying secret hidden in the Grand Secretary Wandaren's backyard? Otherwise, how could he raise such a strange girl? Or was it that Wan Fangfei was really like what she thought? Did she really have a past life, and that she herself was a pervert? Where Jingwan was present, the attention that Li Hongyuan gave to others was absolutely charity. Of course, he would control himself. Even if all of his attention was on her, he would not let others notice. With a so-called fiancé present and an abnormal Wan Fangfei present, letting others discover where his mind was, wouldn't that push Wan to the forefront of the storm? With such attention, how could Li Hongyuan not notice the subtle changes in Jingwan? Following her line of sight, he swept a glance and without stopping, he waved his sleeves and boarded the carriage. His movements were too fast and too sudden, making the brothers who came to pick up their younger sister slightly hesitate. After some hesitation, they went up the mountain to pay their respects and fell into an awkward position. Wan Fangfei's performance, how could Li Hongyuan not know? In his previous life, although Wan Fangfei also admired him and did some things that ordinary people would not do, it was far from the extent that it was now. The worse his reputation was, the worse it was, the more she liked it, the more she wanted to get close to him, the more she wanted to control him. Ah, such an arrogant and conceited woman. After she was no longer useful, how should he tidy her up to make people feel more comfortable? For people with dark hearts, there were two kinds of people in this world that were the most attractive. One was people who were similar to themselves because they understood each other and could often reach a mutual understanding. The other was people who walked on the opposite end of the spectrum. They had something that people who walked in the dark hated but also yearned for. Although Li Hongyuan was not completely a person who walked in the dark, he was not lonely, he was not depraved, and he had not been swallowed up and lost himself. He was very clear about what he was doing and was even more clear about what he needed. However, he could not be considered a normal person. He had no interest in people like Wan Fangfei. That kind of pure and flawless woman was also not his goal. He was firm, obsessed, and there was only one. If those eyes of Wan Fangfei appeared in Wan's eyes, try to imagine that scene. Li Hongyuan suddenly curled up his body and trembled slightly. That was his body's instinctive desire, excitement, and clamor. He did not seem to care at all that he had stripped himself completely, allowing her to easily control him. Jingwan, who turned to get into the carriage, inexplicably felt her hair go numb, as if there was danger approaching in the dark. She could not help but frown. Could it be that something was going to happen again? Eunuch Mu was also not feeling any better. After his master saw Miss Luo, why did he start to go crazy for no reason? Master, take it easy. There are so many people around. If they hear you, your reputation. Eunuch Mu suddenly lowered his head helplessly. His master's reputation couldn't be worse. He lowered his head and pretended to be dead. He also pretended not to see the strange expressions of the people closest to the carriage. Because it was inconvenient for each of them, they did not squeeze into the same carriage on the return journey. With apprehension, Jingwan's mood was taut all the way, fearing that something unexpected would happen again. However, until they entered the city gate, everything was safe and sound. Jingwan was puzzled. Could it be that the bad feeling was not directed at them, but... Jingwan's gaze turned to the front, although she could only see the curtain blocking the carriage door. Could it be that after failing to put him to death once, they dared to assassinate him again in today's situation? Previously, it was not possible at Bailong Temple, and it was even more impossible under this heavy guard. If they really took the risk to this extent, did it mean that the threat of Jean Princely Hongyuan was far beyond imagination? Until the carriages of each family separated, until Jingwan entered the Luo family's gate, nothing happened. Could it be that something went wrong? But that lingering feeling of danger was still there. Jingwan lowered her head and fiddled with the small red sandalwood prayer beads on her wrist. Each bead was round and smooth. Her mother saw that she had one accident after another, and in addition to her grandmother's special instructions, she went to Great Master Liao Qin to ask for it. Jingwan knew that the value of this string of prayer beads was not as simple as Great Master Liao Qin personally consecrating it. The original small red sandalwood beads were not low in age, and after being made into prayer beads, it was at least 200 years old. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was priceless, but Great Master Liao Qin easily gave it to her. What did Great Master Liao Qin say at that time? She had faith with it, it could drive away evil spirits, avoid disasters, and protect her safety, so she must not give it to others. Jingwan fiddled with the prayer beads one by one, and her heart suddenly calmed down. If it was a blessing, it was not a disaster. If it was a disaster, it could not be avoided, so thinking too much was useless. Jingwan went to the main courtyard to pay her respects to old Madame Luo. Seeing that Jingwan's complexion was good and her spirit was also good, she was relieved. After all, she had just returned, so old Madame Luo did not keep her long and let her go back to rest. As she passed by the garden, Jingwan saw Luo Jingying in a cluster of flowers. She was tugging at the petals from time to time, and her eyes were unfocused. Jingwan was right in front of her, but she did not react at all. Suddenly, she laughed foolishly, and it felt like she was in a dream. Jingwan did not know what expression to show. She had only been away for a few days. Why was her sworn enemy already in love the moment she returned? Luo Jingying's servant girl saw the way Jingwan was looking at her young lady and could not help it. Risking being punished, she gently tugged at Luo Jingying's clothes. "Young lady, what are you doing?" Luo Jingying glared at the servant girl angrily. Before Luo Jingying could act up, the servant girl pointed in the direction of Jingwan. Luo Jingying looked over and was stunned. Then she remembered that her appearance just now seemed to have been seen by Jingwan. She was annoyed and angry, but she did not flare up. Instead, she smiled softly. "It turns out that third older sister is back." "Hello, third older sister." She greeted politely without being perfunctory or neglectful. Jingwan returned the greeting unhurriedly. "Third older sister just came back. You must be tired. I won't disturb you." Jingwan looked at Luo Jingying's back as she left. She did not find fault with her, and even her words were not strange. If it was too normal, it would be too abnormal. "Granny, what do you think she's up to this time?" Jingwan asked. "I think it's because fourth young lady has some thoughts. She is quiet and does not want to be disturbed. Naturally, she will be peaceful." Jingwan sighed in her heart. The power of love was really strong. She did not know which family he was from. However, the man who could make Luo Jingying fall in love with him was probably not ordinary. He might even be a member of the imperial family. It had nothing to do with her. As long as she had the ability, even if she became a favorite concubine of the imperial harem, Jingwan would not raise her eyelids. Back to Begonia House, Jingwan asked the wet nurse about what had happened these days. In addition to the big events in the city, the most lively thing in the backyard of the Luo family was probably the third branch. From the moment Luo Rongping blatantly protected Huan Yang, Mrs. Lu basically had a falling out with him. Relying on Madame Luo's support, she directly attacked Wang Yang. Relying on her status as the mistress of the house, she had no scruples about torturing a concubine. She was really bold and unrestrained. It was precisely because she used all her means on the surface. It was simple and crude. Wang Yang, who was better at dirty tricks, really didn't have much power to resist. The most important thing was that she was limited by her status. What Mrs. Lu could do, she couldn't. If she dared to do it, Mrs. Lu dared to directly sell her or even beat her to death. Wang Yang had all kinds of grievances, but she was extremely tolerant. She did whatever Mrs. Lu asked her to do. Anyway, she didn't let Mrs. Lu catch her. She didn't even tell Luo Romping that she was bullied by Mrs. Lu. Her image of compromise was to the extreme. Many servants couldn't stand it. After all, Wang Yang was pregnant. Mrs. Lu looked at them coldly. She naturally knew what the servants were saying behind her back, but she did not say anything about it. She even let these words spread. Until all her deeds were known by Luo Romping. Then, Luo Romping naturally found Mrs. Lu. As a result, an unprecedented quarrel broke out between the husband and wife. Then, Luo Romping saw Mrs. Lu's hidden madness and ruthlessness. Mrs. Lu even almost scratched Luo Romping's face, but because he dodged, his neck was injured. Luo Romping even said that he wanted to divorce his wife. Mrs. Lu gloomily stared at him. Luo Romping, do you dare to divorce your wife? I'll divorce you right now, you jealous woman. Luo Romping, if you dare to write a letter of divorce, as soon as you leave the Luo family's house, I will beat the drum. You. Luo Romping was shocked. He did not expect that Mrs. Lu would dare to do such a thing. How dare you? Why don't I dare? If you dare to bring back a slut to climb on top of my head, I dare to drag the whole Luo family to death. You are crazy. Luo Romping flicked his sleeves and left. Mrs. Lu coldly stared at the direction Luo Romping left. I am crazy. I am driven crazy by you. The drum was not rung unless the country was destroyed. It was not rung unless the army was victorious. It was not rung unless the country was destroyed. It was not rung unless the country was destroyed. It was not rung unless the army was victorious. It was not rung unless the world's injustice was done. There were no guards guarding the drum, so anyone could rung it. However, if it was rung casually, the whole family would be demoted to a criminal slave and sent to the border. If it was rung casually, the whole family would be exterminated. Just because of a dispute in the backyard, Luo Peishan was a minister of the Ministry of Rights. Luo Romping was afraid to shoot the rat for fear of breaking the vases. He had to go back to appease his little wife. He told her not to pay attention to Mrs. Lu. Mrs. Lu didn't need to send someone to look for her. Huan Yang quietly listened. From time to time, she would comfort Luo Romping with a few words. The man was unreliable, so she could only rely on herself. Therefore, Huan Yang shrank in the courtyard and did not go out. She had nothing else, she just had a little money. If she couldn't buy someone with 10 taels of silver, she would spend 100 taels. If Mrs. Lu was not easy to deal with, she would lay her hands on her son. Back and forth, fighting openly and covertly. It was simply too lively. Rung the drum. Third aunt really can't be underestimated. Mama, is there really no one guarding the drum? There wasn't before, but it has been there since 6 years ago. It's just that the people are in the innermost layer and the people outside can't see it. Why? It was impossible for there to be no reason for the sudden increase in guards. Mama Gong paused, because Jin Qin Wang, who had just left the palace, was bored and climbed the drum tower. He almost rung the drum. Since then, His Majesty ordered people to guard the drum tower. Jin Qin Wang. Jingwan was speechless. It's reasonable to say that there shouldn't be many people who know about this. How did Mama know? I accidentally heard it when I was in the palace. Luo Jingying returned to the third branch. After her father and mother had a big quarrel, her father never appeared in the main courtyard of the third branch. Today, he was unexpectedly here and had sent all the servants out. Luo Jingying was worried that they would quarrel again, so she went in regardless of being stopped. Prince Kong is destined by the heavens. If Immerse can marry him. Chapter 84. Prince Kong is destined by the heavens. If Immerse can marry him and become his consort, when he ascends the throne in the future, our Immerse will be the mother of the world. In this way, who would dare to look down on our third branch? As the Guizhang, he should at least be a marquis. Luo Rongbing held a teacup and raised his eyes to look at Lu Shi. If Immerse can win over the emperor's heart and whisper pillow talk, even if your Lu family can't recover its former glory, at least it will make the Bo Fu look the same as it was in the past, and have infinite glory. Lu Shi clenched the handkerchief in her hand, not because of anger, but because of excitement. Luo Rongbing looked at her with slanted eyes and sneered in his heart. If there was a real knot in Lu Shi's heart, it wasn't in the Luo family, nor was it in her children. It was her own birth. She was born in a poor family, but she wanted to become a proud daughter of heaven. If she could make the Lu family rise again and fundamentally raise her status, perhaps she would do her best and be more unscrupulous than planning for her children's future. Think about it carefully. If this matter succeeds, our son's future won't have to worry at all. With an older sister who is the Empress, even if they are dandy for the rest of their lives, no one will dare to provoke them. They will have wind and rain. Them. We don't even know what's in that slut's belly, but you're sure it's a son. Now you're thinking about sharing my daughter's glory. Immerse only has one younger brother. I'm telling you, Luo Rongbing, no one else can get close to her. Oh, is that so? Then you go and do this matter yourself. I want to see how capable Luo Lu Shi, who is awe-inspiring in the inner courtyard of the Luo family, is to help her daughter to the position of Prince Kang's consort. Although Luo Rongbing's expression was indifferent, he had a high and mighty attitude. Even if Mrs. Lu could threaten him, so what? Outside, it was a man's world. You can't do anything just because you're mad. Mrs. Lu gritted her teeth in hatred, but this matter was different. Mrs. Lu couldn't ignore it. Even if she didn't compromise, Luo Rongbing wouldn't ignore it. After all, after this matter was settled, it would be very beneficial to him. He could become the most powerful person among his brothers, and his father-in-law would treat him differently. Luo Rongbing knew the knot in her heart. How could she not know that in addition to his ambition for power, he had buried his deepest thoughts in his heart? However, this man's heart was now on that bitch. Who knew if he would do something unreasonable? What do you want? You don't have to care about Huan Yang. It's best if she goes her own way and you go your own way. Mrs. Lu showed an expression as if she had expected it. Luo Rongbing now cared about that woman. If they really went their own way, not to mention that she would lose face, the entire third branch's life would not be as good as that bitch's. Life was already tight. In this way, they wouldn't get anything except for the things in the family. How could they have the face to go out? No, at most, I won't make things difficult for her. Don't even think about it. And since you're thinking about Immerse, you naturally can't lack clothes and jewelry. I don't have money in my hands. What should I do? Yi, you can decide. Mrs. Lu gathered her hair. He knew that Mrs. Lu's purpose was not as simple as buying clothes and jewelry for his daughter. The most important thing was to ask him for money. However, her excuse was understandable. I'll have someone send the money later, but you'd better remember what you said. If anything happens to Huanyang and the child in her belly, you'll be the only one responsible. Luo Jingying didn't expect that she would hear such a thing when she directly broke in. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't excited. Being the mother of the country was something that many women dreamed of. Her mother always said that she was unspeakably noble. If she really reached that step, she would really be unspeakably noble. However, Luo Jingying thought of the gentle, handsome, and elegant third prince, Prince Rui. He was obviously better than Prince Kong in all aspects. He was obviously more like an emperor. Even if he suffered a little loss in identity, in the real battle for the throne, how many people could become the final winner based on birth? No, she had to make her father change his mind. Luo Jingying clenched her fists, took a deep breath, and walked into the door in a dignified manner. Father, mother, why are you here? Not to mention Luo Romping, even Mrs. Lu's face was not very good. Father, mother, daughter heard what you said just now. Mrs. Lu, is this the good daughter you taught? Eavesdropping on her parents' conversation. Luo Romping stared at Mrs. Lu with a gloomy face. There was still no sign of this matter. If this evil daughter of his shouted out, not only would it not succeed, but it would also make him lose face and become a laughing stock. Father, don't be angry, and don't blame mother. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just worried about you, so I broke in. Can you listen to what I have to say? Luo Jingying crossed her hands in front of her body and stood upright. She spoke calmly, not in a hurry. This kind of girl, not to mention Luo Romping, even Mrs. Lu was a little surprised. She was not impatient, she was not rash, she was not reckless, this was her ideal daughter. Could it be that this was the result of correcting her in the past few days? If she knew this would happen, she would have been ruthless earlier. Master, after all, this matter concerns my daughter's life. Since she heard it, why don't you listen to what she has to say? If there is something good about her, she may be of some use. If not, you can teach her well. Luo Romping was silent for a moment. If he really helped his daughter to the position of Princess Kong, it would definitely not do if she did not know anything. Even if she was to be an understanding flower, she had to at least understand what her man was saying. If she was just a vase, no matter how beautiful she was, there would be a day when she would grow old. Moreover, for the group of men in the imperial family, they had seen countless women, and there were not many who were not beautiful women. In this way, the time she would be favored would be shorter, and she might not even be favored from the beginning. A legal wife who was completely ignored by her husband was not even as good as a favored concubine. He went out for a while, ordered someone to guard the door, and then came back. What do you want to say? Father, instead of choosing Prince Kong, why not choose Prince Rui? Evil daughter, do you know what you are saying? Luo Romping wanted to go forward and slap her. Choosing a side was not a trifling matter. Those in power hated fence-sitters the most. Even if he had not really gotten close to Prince Kong yet, it would be soon. It was a critical time. Perhaps in a few days, he would be able to meet the prince directly. If he chose another master at this time, not only would all his previous efforts be in vain, but he might also be retaliated by Prince Kang's faction. Father, I know what I am saying. Listen to me first. It won't be too late for you to get angry. Well, I'd like to hear it. What else can you say? Father, let's not talk about other things. Between Prince Kong and Prince Rui, who is more capable, who is more appreciated by His Majesty, and who is more favored by His Majesty, even us indoors women know clearly. Although the position of Crown Prince is not decided by His Majesty's personal preference, Prince Rui's advantages are obvious to all. The fight for the throne has always been about the results, not the process. The most obvious advantage that Prince Rui has over Prince Kong is that he has the right commander-in-chief in charge of military power. To put it bluntly, even if Prince Kong ascends the throne, if Prince Rui is unwilling, before Prince Kong stabilizes the throne. Luo Jingying paused, but Luo Rongbing knew what she meant. Go on. Father's wisdom is unparalleled. I believe that when you were choosing, your real goal was not Prince Kong, was it? Naturally, it was not Prince Kong. It was just that at that time, Prince Rui had no choice but to side with Prince Kang's faction. Even if it was so what? You have to know that if you abandoned Prince Kong and chose Prince Rui, not to mention the position of Wang Fei, it would be hard to say if you could even become a side consort. Do you think you are so cheap? Then what are the chances that father can make daughter Kong Wang Fei? It's not that daughter is looking down on father, but based on our family, even if eldest sister is not married, there is not much hope for her to become Prince Kang's second Wang Fei, right? Why should I? In order to achieve her goal, Luo Jingying, who had always been loftier than the sky, had belittled herself like this for the first time. She thought that she did not mean what she said, but this was the truest truth that she was unwilling to face and admit. But Prince Rui is different. It is much easier to obtain the position of side consort. Even if I can't do this, what if daughter can give birth to a son for Prince Rui? Don't forget, the concubine in Prince Rui's residence who had high hopes also did not give birth to a son. This matter was released by someone with ulterior motives, and almost everyone knew about it. Prince Rui has been ridiculed a lot these days. If daughter gave birth to Prince Rui's eldest son, he may be able to become the son of the first wife in the future. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. Who can say for sure? With Prince Kong, there will be no such advantages. Even if daughter is a Wang Fei and gives birth to a son of the first wife, she will still be inferior to the son of the first wife. Father, don't you think so? Luo Rongbing frowned and quietly pondered. He had to admit that his daughter's words were reasonable. But he did not want to waste all his efforts and take risks, not to mention how to establish a relationship with Prince Rui. Luo Rongbing threw out the problem. He wanted to see if this daughter, who had made him look at her in a new light, could give him a pleasant surprise. Wealth comes from danger. It depends on whether father dares to do it or not. What do you mean? Be a nail for Prince Rui to plant in Prince Kang's faction. You really dare to say that? One mistake and you will lose your life. Luo Rongbing looked at her coldly. That's why wealth comes from danger. This is the fastest way to gain Prince Rui's trust and an important position. Compared to slowly climbing up in Prince Kang's faction, it is much better to be mediocre for the rest of your life. In this way, wouldn't it be logical to mention the matter of daughter entering Prince Rui's residence? That Ce Fei position might be easily obtained without any effort. As for how to establish a relationship with Prince Jin, daughter was on the street 2 days ago. Luo Jingying played down the matter of Prince Rui helping her out of her predicament. Although Prince Rui doesn't care about a colored glass lamp, we can't not care about it. Father, use this as a reason, there must be a way to establish a relationship. Lucia slightly narrowed her eyes as she looked at her own daughter. It really made her somewhat surprised. Luo Rongbing sunk into contemplation. It was clear that his heart was really moved. Previously, when he mentioned to Lucia about marrying his daughter to Prince Kong, he did have that idea. He said it so solemnly, but wasn't it because Lucia didn't understand the outside world? In fact, he was very clear that to achieve his wish, the possibility of daydreaming was higher. He mainly did it for Huan Yang. He hoped to use this as a condition to fool Lucia and make her restrain herself a little. He just didn't want to accidentally hit the road and get an unexpected harvest. Father will think about this matter carefully. Looking at Luo Jingying, for the first time, he became very amiable. You performed very well today. This is how Luo Rongbing's daughter should be. You must continue to maintain it. Father doesn't want to see you like before, always doing stupid things. Daughter was young and insensible before, making father worry. In the future, I will certainly not be like this. Luo Romping got up, I'll go first. Lucier got up slowly and sent Luo Jingying off with Luo Romping. Then, she sat back and looked at Luo Jingying with a measuring gaze. Luo Jingying felt very uncomfortable under her gaze. These days, her fear of Lucier was really increasing day by day. She couldn't help but shrink back a little. Mother, what's wrong? I thought you had really grown up. It turns out that you're just a flower. You won't last long. Lucier faintly said. Mother. Luo Jingying was embarrassed by her sarcastic words. Your attitude was very good just now. Why can't you continue to pretend? Because you've achieved your goal. Without a goal to support it, you can't hold it anymore. Luo Jingying's lips wriggled twice, and her expression was somewhat evasive. Mother, what are you talking about? You grew up under mother's eyes. You can hide your little thoughts from others, but can you hide them from me? Do you have a crush on Prince Rui? Mother, no, if you have a crush on him, then so be it. Lucier waved her hand to interrupt her. This time, your taste is not bad. Straighten your back. You have the courage to say those words to your father. You can also be neither servile nor overbearing, open and generous. Now that I haven't done anything to you, you're already shrinking back. I've told you before, in front of anyone, you have to show the same magnanimity as before, including me. Since you have that ambition, you must have the corresponding ability and self-restraint. Luo Jingying subconsciously straightened her back, but her eyes were still a little erratic. Mother, you're not angry. Why should I be angry? Prince Rui is indeed a good candidate. Compared to Qin Jingmin, who knows how many times better he is. If this matter is successful, Luo Jingwan and those people will be nothing. You can easily trample them under your feet. However, you must not be complacent about this matter. Other than your father and us, you can't let anyone else know. Otherwise, when the time comes, our entire family will have to bear the consequences. Do you understand? Mother, I know the severity of the matter. I absolutely won't say a word. Go back to your room. I want you to learn etiquette, how to deal with people, and some other things from the etiquette instructor. You won't be perfunctory and feel uneasy anymore, right? Luo Jingying's face was a little hot. Mother, daughter was insensible in the past and didn't know your good intentions. In the future, I will definitely learn well. It's good that you know. Go. Daughter will take her leave. The family of three thought that they did it secretly, but who knew that there was a kind of scheming person in this world? Not long after, these words all fell into Gong Mama's ears. Gong Mama's face was still expressionless. She wouldn't tell Miss about this matter, mainly because it wasn't as fierce as before with the third branch. Almost everyone in the Luo family knew about it. This matter could be considered as a family's secret plot. If everyone knew about it clearly, anyone would be suspicious, let alone someone as exquisite as Mississippi Jingwan concentrated on taking care of her precious flowers and plants. For the time being, she put aside the matters of the outside world. After all, Yuan Qiao and Zhou Yingshuang's bodies could only be slowly nurtured. She wasn't a doctor, so she couldn't help at all. As for Sun Yijia's marriage, it was the highest authority of the Qi Yuan dynasty. No one could say anything about it. Now, she hoped that the daring Jin Qin Wang, who was known as the living king of hell, could mess up this marriage. Although the imperial family broke off the engagement, which had a great impact on a woman, Sun Yijia was different. In any case, she was already disfigured. If she stayed in Dingguo Gongfu, there would be a few people to protect her. Everyone thought that Li Hongyuan would enter the palace as soon as he returned to the capital. Even if he didn't go to mess up the marriage, he should go and pay respects to his Fu Wang Mufei. But unexpectedly, he directly returned to Jin Qin Wang Fu and closed the door. Not to mention the brothers who sent people to check on his situation, even the people around Lu Qingdi who came to the door were met with a nose full of dust. Lu Qingdi was so angry that he flipped the table and smashed the booklet. He roared and cursed, but everyone could hear that no matter how angry he was full of energy. It could be seen that when Jin Qin Wang returned, his spirit also came back. He scolded for less than an hour, evil creature, unfilial son, ungrateful wretch, without stopping. Originally, at this time, he was still in the imperial study discussing matters with the courtiers and 2 or 3 of his sons. In the end, he encountered this matter. A group of people could only hang their heads and wait for him to scold them. However, Li Hongyuan, he wasn't here at all. It was so embarrassing. Whoever was in front of him was unlucky. Many people could do this kind of thing, let alone the emperor. Doing it was even more natural and self-righteous. No one could refute or protest. If you dared to snort at him, he would immediately cut you to death. He was not below one person, only above millions of people, so he was willful and unreasonable. The Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, Wan Ruizhong, Wan Daren, had never made a mistake in political affairs. At this time, he was also scolded like a dog by Lu Qingdi. To say whether he resented the main culprit, Jin Qin Wang, in the beginning, there might be, but time after time, he had long gotten used to it. No matter how angry or resentful you were, it was useless and would harm the body. The best way was to listen and wait for Lu Qingdi's anger to subside, or wait for Jin Qin Wang to enter the palace to let Lu Qingdi transfer his anger. However, listening to Lu Qingdi's scolding, the people below more or less dispelled the idea that Lu Qingdi had already found Li Hongyuan. Whether a person was really angry or pretending, especially in this kind of emotional situation, after a long time, it could still be seen. They didn't know how many cups of tea Lu Qingdi had drunk, but finally, he slowly stopped scolding. After scolding, the political affairs had to continue. After reluctantly dealing with the political affairs, Lu Qingdi let the sons of the officials scram, and then went straight to the Jade Essence Palace in anger. Without waiting for Imperial Consort Su to salute, he said, "That evil creature and unfilial son, Shen is so angry. Missing for so long, doesn't he know that his father will be worried?" Coming back, he didn't even enter the palace to pay his respects. If it was someone else, Shen would have already taken his head. For this kind of situation, Imperial Consort Su had long been accustomed to it. She personally poured a cup of tea for Lu Qingdi. "Your Majesty, calm down. You should let Qinxue say it. The reason why Yuan dared to be so unscrupulous was because of your indulgence." Shen indulged. "Isn't it because of my beloved consort?" Lu Qingdi glared. Imperial Consort Su wasn't afraid at all. She looked at him with a smile and stroked his chest. Yes, Qinxue indulged. But if your Majesty didn't indulge Qinxue also didn't dare to indulge Yuan. In the end, it was your Majesty who indulged him." Lu Qingdi angrily glared at her, refusing to admit that the evil creature's current virtue was mostly because of himself. Why didn't Li Hongyuan directly enter the palace? Why didn't he say that Mu Gonggong had the most right to speak, but it was also very difficult to say. When Li Hongyuan returned to Jin Qin Wang Fu, he directly bathed and changed his clothes. Then, he lay back on the bed and refused to move. With his dead appearance, you still expect him to enter the palace, expect him to receive guests. Wait until he was willing to slow down. That's right, he was willing. Li Hongyuan's slowdown lasted for 3 days, making Lu Qingdi's patience almost reach its limit. If he still didn't enter the palace, he would definitely send people to surround Jin Qin Wang Fu and capture him into the palace. Li Hongyuan wore the imperial attire of a Qin Wang. From head to toe, there wasn't a single spot. His entire person had an imposing appearance and was extraordinarily handsome. Excluding other things, just based on his bearing and appearance, there weren't many girls who wouldn't be convinced by him. Mu Gonggang tidied up the corner of his clothes for him and sighed in his heart. If outsiders knew the real master, he was afraid that all the girls in the capital would be dead set on him. However, Li Hongyuan only occasionally went to court and generally wouldn't wear the imperial attire. What happened today? So solemn. Qin Wang Fu's imperial attire, Qin Wang Fu's ceremonial attire. The main gate of Qin Wang Fu opened and he mightily went out. There were many Qin Wang Fu in this area. One by one, they quickly knew that this person finally went out after returning to the capital and was preparing to enter the palace with such momentum. They were all Qin Wang, so their imperial attire and ceremonial attire were the same. They wore the imperial attire and used the ceremonial attire frequently. However, they only used it occasionally. Sometimes, they wouldn't see Li Hongyuan use it once in a year or two. But once he used it, it gave people a different feeling. However, if you wanted to say what was different, it wasn't clear. When Lu Qingdi learned that Li Hongyuan finally entered the palace, he was overjoyed and couldn't help but stand up. But he immediately thought of something and angrily sat back down. That evil creature still knows to enter the palace. When he comes, let him kneel outside for 2 shurchen. Then, not long after, the people below told him, Emperor, Qin Wang went to Yuchui Palace. Lu Qingdi almost smashed the imperial desk again.